So thank you all for joining LEAP today. Our group, Labor Efficiency, Automation, and Production, or LEAP, Nursery Crops Towards Sustainability, received a United States Department of Agricultural National Institute of Food and Agricultural Specialty Crops Research Initiative Award in 2024 to both create automation and stimulate adoption of existing automation in nursery crops. You can read all about it and see these pre-recorded presentations as well as other videos about automation at nurseryleap.com, which I will put into the chat after this. Today's event is part of LEAP's outreach, and we've nicknamed the series Leap Forward Innovations in Nursery Automation, and this will also be part of a monthly article that we will be publishing in Nursery Management Magazine, as suggested by Kelly Rada. And this is where we invite growers and allied industry to present an idea, services, tips, and tricks about how nursery growers can save labor, become more efficient, adopt automation, and streamline production and leap forward, saving labor and return investment. Today's guest speaker is Jacob Carson, who is the Director of Strategy and Business Development for AdeptAg, AdeptAg is a trusted automation, irrigation, and controls partner for horticultural, greenhouse, and controlled environment ag growers across North America, which is based in Oberlin, Ohio. And Jacob is going to present for 20 minutes and take questions from you, asking outright or writing in the chat, and we'll sort of field those chat questions if you have some, but you're more than welcome to, when he asks for feedback, unmute yourself and ask the question. And if you do, please, state your name and the organization that you're from. I'm going to mute everybody during the presentation, but you can unmute yourself when he asks. So thank you, and let me introduce Jacob Carson, who will begin to share his screen. And thank you for today. Let me stop sharing. Ugh. There we go.
Okay.
Now you should be able to share your screen and get started.
Can you all see me? Great. That's what I like to hear. Well, thumbs up. So, yep, my name is Jacob Carson. Thanks for the introduction, Anthony. Today we're going to be talking predominantly about the Burro. We'll get into all the fun details of what that is, but maybe some of you are familiar with the Burro. Maybe you've seen it in action. Maybe some of you have a nursery where some of these burros have been implemented, which would be super exciting, and definitely would love to hear your feedback on the technologies, but we'll go ahead and get into it. So a little bit of background on, the relationship between AdeptAg and Burro. Because I don't work for Burro, I work for AdeptAg. And in 2022, AdeptAg was formed, United North America's leading horticultural automation, irrigation, and control systems. So that would be agronomics, plant tech, and Zwart. Agronomics being based in Oberlin, Ohio, and then plant tech and Zwart based out of Ontario. And then last year, AdeptAg and Burro announced a strategic partnership of sorts where AdeptAg, we had really seen a lot of the value that Burro could bring to this industry, and we wanted to help connect our growers to be with this technology because we did see such a big opportunity with it. And so in 2024, we had Burro in our booth at Cultivate. Maybe some of you stopped by, got to see it. Probably didn't get to ride on one, but we could all dream. And so that was a fun kind of exhibition of kind of announcing that partnership and when we really started moving forward with it. So, what the heck is a Burro? And I would say it's an AGV in that it's an automated guided vehicle built for the nursery horticulture industry. There's some other aspects that they get into, vineyards, berries, things of that sort. And there's three models of what a Burro is. So you have the original Burro, that's the one kind of on the far left. You have the Verde and the Grande. about 95% of nursery applications are going to be using the Burro Grande. It has a larger base, bigger towing payload. The original Burro is kind of more for vineyards and berries. The Verde gets into some greenhouses and depot yards. It's the most narrow. So sometimes as we're trying to, go through maybe skinnier aisles, that's one where it can be implemented. But the Grande, by and large, when you're looking at nursery cultivation, is going to be the product for you. And so the Burro, it uses 24 sensors, including cameras, LiDAR, high precision GPS to navigate both indoors and outdoors. They can run, either on a programmed route or sometimes on what I'll call a digital train track through a complex setting, which basically is a line maybe drawn through the facility on some designated routes, um, all day long. So even if GPS isn't available, or some of these cell signals aren't available for it to use, there's still ways to kind of utilize that Burro, because we all know sometimes in a nursery setting you don't always get the best cell signals or internet signals, or whatever have you. Um, so there is 360-degree 3D LiDAR, allows it to see about 120 feet in a 360 degree direction around the Burro Grande. That helps us ensure safety and that it's not hitting other components. As opposed for the battery packs, has about a 48 volt, 10 kilowatt battery that's standard on the Grande, and then you can have extra battery packs that can triple the life of that unit. It has a hitch, 2-inch standard receiver. The Burro has kind of the largest flatbed to be able to place products on. But I would say what we've seen most common here recently in the nursery aspect is people loading carts and things onto the hitch, and then towing and pulling that forward. You could have different tire options depending on the surface. There's different accessories that can be added onto the Burro, such as what's called the cortador, or a mower. So it can go out and mow some fields while not being used in the nursery setting, or specifically for that application if that's what you wanted. There's also a reset. It's actually not on this little PowerPoint that we have here, but there's also a spraying attachment, very popular in some of the vineyard applications, where you could have a spraying robot kind of attached to the Burro as it goes through a vineyard field, or perhaps in your nursery. And then there's, in the autonomy section here on the PowerPoint, you can see something referred to as BOSS. That's kind of just a fancy word for what I would say the automated routing systems. The BOSS is really only for the Burro, which is kind of just a standard outdoor only harvest assist, where it's kind of a simple repetitive routes, where the BOSS Plus really creates a whole web-based interface platform called Atlas that allows you to interact with the Burro, set routes and destinations, both indoors and outdoors. So that Grande, you can see the standard charge times, 11 hours, the battery range about 15 miles. That can be adjusted with additional battery packs. The max speed of about 5.8 miles per hour, towing capacity of about 5,000 pounds. And then on the unit itself, you could load about 1,000 pounds of product. So I have a couple videos. Not sure if we really need the volume, so I'll just mute it. This one's nice. Hopefully you all can see it. I know it's a little small, but this kind of just shows some of the burrows. And this is a video from Altman's Plants. But the very first part of this is kind of going to show some of that Boss Plus interfacing, which I think is great to be able to kind of show on your display what this could look like as you're saving routes, setting up varying speed limits in between those routes. So maybe if there's a certain period where you want the burrow going slower or faster, they can kind of zoom through in those applications. So you can see here where we're towing a lot of carts, a lot of nursery carts throughout the facility, in between greenhouses and nurseries, going inside environments, going in and outdoor environments, passing through. I'll go ahead and play this second video, not to distract you too much. I know sometimes a little bit um, can be going on, but this other video also shows kind of a nice application where coming right off of a planting line where you would be able to load up those burrows. And we'll talk about some of the applications here in a little bit. But just kind of showing, some of the burrow in action on what it could be used for. There's a user interface local to the burrows that people are able to utilize. They're able to function in a group. I always love this Altman video where they're all kind of lined up, moving along. So you can see here where they're loading up, going through a processing step, getting ready for shipment. And there's a little quote at the end of this one that talks about, at first a lot of the users around the burrow, they might have been a little bit skeptical, but as people became more comfortable with the burrow AGV units, they were really excited about the opportunity to use them more. Okay. So one of the main aspects of the burrow and the automation holistically is that there's problems with labor today. I actually just got back from DC with American Hordes Impact Washington Summit, meeting with congressionals, and I'd say 60-70% of the conversations were focused on H-2A reform with Congress. And I hate to be a pessimist, but the near-term outlook for a revamped program didn't sound great. It didn't sound like there was going to be a whole lot of legislation action done this year. Maybe I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong, but it doesn't sound like labor rates are going to get shorter or smaller anytime soon, and it sounds like we're going to continue to face struggles accessing labor. And so, on this PowerPoint, we have a couple notes where, and I'm sure you all have experienced this, those of you that are working in the nursery industry, where labor costs account for a large portion of the operating costs. We've seen labor costs increase dramatically, particularly with how H-2A labor is calculated, and it's kind of become a positive for loop throughout the years as that labor rate continues to be ever increasing. It's become harder to recruit domestic labor. Americans just seem not to want to do a lot of these jobs. And so that's some of the trouble that we have with H-2A. And so a lot of times what you're seeing in the nursery application is you have individuals, driving these tractors, but what we just saw in that video, pulling those carts, taking them from location A to location B, and it adds a dramatic amount of costs. We have a note here about 16.25 as a labor rate. Talking to growers and execs today, pretty much everyone was telling me that their real labor rate that they're experiencing today is in the mid-20s, $20 per hour. And, that's not only the hourly rate that you have to include, but, for an H-2A employee, you're in charge of transportation, transporting that individual locally and abroad. You have to house them, administration fees. So, all this adds up. And luckily, automation can be a solution for what you're looking for. And this is really where the Burro is able to fit in that with a fleet of burros, you move from needing, what was potentially 7 individuals in this, theoretical situation to just one person managing an entire fleet. So this has a lot of potential not only to reduce the overall labor needed, but you're kind of bringing in and upskilling that individual. So instead of someone just driving around a tractor, now you have a person commanding an entire fleet of burrows. This is kind of a higher skilled position, someone using a little bit more of their capabilities to ultimately provide similar results that we're getting just with all these individuals. And we also see, some lower input costs. Instead of using, maybe a diesel tractor or, some type of fuel, we're charging these burros. The burros use electricity. They charge via their battery packs. And the other aspect of the burro is that it can be used for other components. During one time of the year or one part of the day, they might be transporting nursery stock. Maybe then you set it out for another task. Maybe it's going, doing some mowing, some things of that sort. So there's a lot of opportunity to be able to use these to reduce some of that automation or increase the automation and reduce some of that labor. So what does it look like? You're interested in a burrow where we're trying to design a system around these burrows. What are some of the questions that we're asking? What does it look like? And the big thing is trying to understand the routes that burrow is going to go. We're trying to figure out if there are obstacles, are there going to be cross traffic flows? Is the burrow going to really be able to function? What are some of these workflows? Are they going from potting from the hoop houses and beds? And then different aspects of that. Are they maybe looking at shipping, transporting from the field to a dock? Maybe they're going from plant respacing, from one facility or one area to another. Or maybe it's looking at spraying or mowing. So these are some of the aspects that we're looking at. And then there are some, what I would say, specific items that we would need to know, whether it's cell phone strength or, different protocols that are available. Internet, I have N-trip validation here. Don't ask me to get too much into data protocols, but that is one that's specific to the Burro. What are the hours that we're working? What type of weight and product are we trying to get? What are the dimensions of those products? Ensuring that we have kind of everything that we need. What type of surfaces are they going to be traveling on? We have different tire options and things of that sort that can apply to the Burro. So it is able to work in a variety of settings, but it is something that does need to be addressed to where I know for some facilities and layouts that we've looked at where we aren't very confident that we're going to be able to get good cell or internet signal to the Burro, where, we might put it in a line, like actually draw a physical line throughout the facility that Burro would kind of be able to follow with some of its LiDAR technology. And then once we're kind of looking at the Burro and we've designed it, we have a contract, what does it actually look like to implement the Burro on site? And so we would schedule it out. We might do some drone surveys. We'd create these routes, and then it'd be delivered. So here, in this bottom left corner, you can kind of see some of the Atlas software, and some of the Burro routing where users can select where they would want to go, the speed at which they would want to go. You can save these routes to where users would either be able to manually tell the Burro on its interface, I want to do route A, or a user from a web-based platform, whether a tablet, cell phone, laptop, whatever have you, would be able to also command those Burros on where to go. And we would come out, we would kind of do an on-site commissioning. One day kind of for an initial setup is typically all it takes, depending on the fleet and the I would say the number of routes that we're looking to do, and then constantly following up. So the Burros, they're able to be updated remotely. And this is a new technology. I think we're about 9 years into the Burros. So they have, some history and some background. And I would say we're over some of the major learning curves to where it's a pretty adaptable technology to where we feel comfortable at AdeptAg bringing it to our customers at this point. But it's constantly being improved. So I think as growers and nursery producers continue to get these Burros into their facilities, they'll be able to see some of that opportunity to be able to expand on it. And I know we flew through pretty quick, But if anyone has any questions, or wants to circle back to anything else,
Jacob, Anthony, can I go? Hey, Jacob, thank you for your presentation. It's really interesting. I appreciate you doing this. I've seen these at nurseries, but I haven't seen the overall, the big picture of this. So you may have showed this indirectly, but what is the return on invest? How long does it take to pay off one of these, considering it seems to replace one burrow replaces a human being? How long does it take to pay this off in a typical nursery setting?
so it depends on its usability. I think a lot of times our clients are seeing anywhere from like a 2 to 5 year ROI for the Burrow, just depending on the exact application. There's a couple ROI calculations out there, and if you have a specific scenario, I'd be happy to look at it with you. The Burrow Grande, it costs about 35,000 US dollars, and then there's kind of some subscription packages and maybe some additional accessories that you'd be interested in looking at. There might be the other aspect of a tractor isn't free in some of these other aspects. So that's sometimes one of the aspects that we're looking at is where someone's comparing it to, well, I already own the tractor, so I don't need to buy a new one, versus that's not necessarily a fair ROI comparison. So the set cost of that, but you do see a significant labor gain from that. And I think another part of the ROI aspect and where we've really talked about it with a lot of clients is, if you don't have access to the labor, it's not necessarily a question of ROI as much of it is a need. And this is needed in my facility, or else I'm not going to be able to do it. So now people are able to take labor that might have been going, moving plants from point A to point B, and now they're able to implement it elsewhere.
If you want to ask a question, please unmute yourself. You should be able to do that from your Zoom. And
Jacob, this is Amy Fulcher. That was excellent. I really enjoyed it. I thought I heard LiDAR in there somewhere, and I'm just untangling myself from a field day. So do you mind to just briefly touch on that?
So it has 360-degree LiDAR that's able to see about 120 feet completely around the unit, that allows it to prevent from running into obstacles. There's also bumper bars and some other sensors on the unit that allows it to be safe. Um Not to say that I haven't heard of anything happening, but or that there haven't been any implications, but I've never heard of an incident with a Burro where there was any type of major collision. They once they get pretty close to a unit, they can slow down a fair bit. And I do think it's important, when you're looking at some of that routing, there's a reason that they built in the function to have it slow down in certain aspects. So if you have a very busy lane in your nursery, maybe slowing down the speed on that Burro as it's going through that busier aspect, and then kind of moving it up to its full 5.8 mile per hour range and some of those other ones. But it does have 360-degree LiDAR.
Thank you.
The original Burro, the base model, does not have that capability, but the Burro Grande does. And the Verde can be upgraded to have that LiDAR component. If you can see this picture here, this little kind of blue orb right up top, that's the actual LiDAR sensor there. And then there's some motion sensor technology on the front and back, just as kind of a second check to make sure that if there was anything directly in front of it, that it's not going to hit.
That's great. Thank you.
we have about 5 more minutes for some more questions. You can write it in the chat, or unmute yourself. I am going to ask a question if I don't see anybody unmute themselves. So Jacob, what new opportunities has a burrow afforded a grower that they didn't know was possible that might not have also been advertised, for the burrow itself? Like what other things have they unlocked by having one that they didn't realize what they were capable of or didn't think that they could use a burrow for? Do you have any examples of that from maybe some growers that have already adopted it?
I think a lot of times, the idea of placing product on the burrow, we've seen applications where growers maybe were just thinking, oh, I'm going to use this to load nursery carts and move it from point A to point B. But another aspect of the burrow that we've seen is being able to use the actual surface, and it can be used complementary in this aspect, but almost as like a mobile conveyance system. In that maybe just for a very short route, instead of setting up mobile conveyors, which is something that, AdeptAg represents, and there are other aspects in the industry that look at, short-term conveyance. You could also place and stack pots or, pallets. The frame of that Burro Grande is designed to kind of accept a pallet to where you could place pallets and then kind of just do a short route to where you can use a conveyance system. And what we've seen is, someone might get one or two burrows, and then they really uncover, a lot of the opportunities that they can see of, moving product from A to B, and then
Right.
being able to go about that. And I think as Burrow continues to innovate, we've seen the mower model come out. We've seen the spraying robot come out. One of their earliest, they call it the Burrow Watchdog. Just kind of roaming the side and alerting if, if something is seen that maybe shouldn't be there at late at night or whatever have you. And, so while these units do need to spend time charging, there are other avenues that they can do it. And I know Burrow is going to continue to innovate and is looking to innovate on additional accessories. So, even where opportunities might be seen today, down the line, there could be another thing that comes out that really opens your eyes to what it could do.
Excellent.
We've
Thank you.
kind of been in some conversation where, oh, what if we're, able to attach some type of robotic arm, or there's kind of always some crazy scenarios get talked about, but if no one talks about them, they'll never happen.
Right, right. And you probably are taking feedback from growers that have adopted the burrow in terms of adjustments or functions or also let's see, features that they didn't that they think would be important for it to have in the future, I suspect.
No, and the Burrow is very user friendly. It has the heads up display. You can have a kind of a remote option where someone could use it. Full English, Spanish. I think there are some other language applications as well, but it's able to kind of quickly flip between English and Spanish for users looking to do that.
Okay, excellent. Any other questions?
And if anyone has anything else, my email's down here at the bottom. Feel free to reach out to myself or Brian as well. I know Brian Groves is on this call, and he's affiliated. So we'd be more than happy, to connect you or answer any other additional questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Jacob. We really appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us today on our Leap Forward Innovations in Nursery Automation. We will have another speaker next month, and we'll send out another invite. You can also contact us through nurseryleap.com if you have any questions or suggestions. So thank you all very much for joining us.